Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Daily Audio Diet. So, how many plays does it take to destroy a vinyl record? Oh, that was a question posed, and someone did some testing on that. Well, I can tell you for a fact from my childhood that a mother throwing vinyl records at you like a frisbee definitely can destroy vinyl records. I had that experience quite often, but I digress. We're talking here about actually playing the record. Well, their 2-month long experiment showed a person on a YouTube site exactly what would happen. And the results may be a bit surprising. Now, the way they did this was to basically try to figure out whether the claims that have been made, which have been from the point of saying a record played 10 or 25 times would start to wear and have audible detection of that, to some saying thousands of plays are possible. And so the question became, when in fact is any wear substantiated and audible? And so there was a 2-month experiment run, and there were 3 systems. There was a bottom end type system with a ceramic cartridge, a Quasar CS7030 stereo all-in-one. A budget model had a ceramic cartridge, sapphire stylus, and tracked at 5.5 grams. The middle of the road was an Audio-Technica ATPL50, an entry-level turntable with a magnetic cartridge, actually an Audio-Technica cartridge, with a diamond conical stylus tracking at 3.5 grams. Now that one's like the ATLP 60 and 70 of today's models. And then the top turntable was a Technics SLQD33, more of a mid-range turntable, but it had a Grado magnetic cartridge, elliptical diamond stylus, and tracked at 1.5 grams. And so the testing was to use multiple copies of the same record, and then having a fourth which was unplayed as a control copy for comparisons, while the others that were going to be used, the other 3 were going to be played 50 times on their respective turntables. And the play sequence was once per weekday, twice on weekends and on holidays to reflect realistic listening habits. Turntable lids were kept closed, and the styli were regularly cleaned to help build up, which would screw the future results. And after those 50 plays over those 2 weeks, they compared the test records with the untouched control copy. Well, how much did the records that were played wear after 50 plays? So to determine whether the test records had actually degraded, they used a Technics SL1900 turntable with a Stanton 681 EEE calibration cartridge, and it was a high-end setup to have low distortion and flat frequency response, so even small changes in sound quality would be easy to detect. What they found was there was no increase in surface noise, no loss of high frequencies, and no audible distortion. Even the records that were played on the low-end Quasar turntable, often criticized for its ceramic cartridge and, of course, 5.5 grams of weight, showed no clear degradation. So that directly contradicts the widely held belief that inexpensive records rapidly destroy vinyl. So that directly contradicted the widely held belief that inexpensive record players rapidly destroy vinyl. So a technical analysis then was done of the Grooveware using a spectrum analysis software to back up the listening tests. And the results showed that differences were measured in the fractions of a decibel, far too small to be perceptible to the human ear, and the only minor frequency changes occurred above 18,000 hertz, or 18 kHz, a range beyond which most people can hear. So it raises the question, if the cheap turntable isn't ruining records, what causes vinyl wear? Well, the biggest threats to the longevity of vinyl Could be things more in the poor maintenance or improper setup or poor environmental factors like stylus quality and condition. So is it a stylus that has been worn over time or has a chip in it and is actually cutting some section of the groove as it is playing it? Tracking force calibration. Now this one's mentioned, but it says too much pressure grinds away at the grooves. Well, yes, a lot. I remember the day where a record would skip and you would tape a dime or a penny onto the tone arm by the cartridge to get it to not skip. The Rolling Stones, I Get No Satisfaction and Get Off My Cloud 7-inch 45s back in the day were classic examples of ones that skipped that we did that with. So the weight certainly is critical, as is the geometric setup and the azimuth alignment, so that the needle is in there centered and isn't skewed or cocked one way or the other and wearing on the inner or outer groove. Turntable leveling, if your turntable isn't well leveled, that can also cause there to be some uneven pressure. And of course, dust or dirt buildup on the records and not cleaning them, not cleaning your cartridge are also things that can affect the outcome of what you're listening to. Other mentions were storing records vertically in proper inner sleeves to prevent warping is important, keeping them in low humidity environments to avoid moisture damage. Friction causes temporary heat buildup that can soften grooves, making them more susceptible to wear. So avoiding repeat plays in quick succession. Now, this is the one I want to talk about because back in the day in the 70s, there was a product called SoundGuard by Ball Corporation. Then it was a preservation product. So after cleaning a record, I would put SoundGuard on and it would put a film or a layer on there. And this protected the record from heat buildup and excessive wear. And I did test this, repeated playing two of the same records over and over, one with SoundGuard and one without, and definitely found that there was more wear when you did successive plays on a record over and over again that wasn't treated. So that point of repeated plays, and back in the day, a lot of people repeated plays. They just let it, they had automatic turntables. It would reject, come back, play it again. And that was often done. And that definitely can be a factor. And, it's really important to recognize that even though some of these things are in a controlled situation, I think doing this test with playing it once a day and extending out the time between plays definitely would decrease the chance of that type of wear on a record. But successive plays is certainly something to keep an eye on. But the bottom line here is playing records on these other type systems in and of itself doesn't induce high degrees of wear, although one would think that would be the case. I certainly advise people to get a turntable that has, at a minimum, the ability to set weight for the vertical side of the needle coming down and tracking into the record, and to have anti-skate to keep it from the centrifugal force wear that pulls it into the center. And that, for me, is kind of a minimum. But it is interesting to see this. I will put some links in the comments to this testing and article, and you can see for yourself how they did it. So that's it for today's Daily Audio Diet. Catch you tomorrow.